Her name was Elena Moreau. She stood on the glass stage floor of the boardroom while the entire executive team watched in silence. The CEO, Richard Hale, didn't lower his voice. He didn't soften his tone. He didn't even look uncomfortable. Effective immediately, he said, Elena is being reassigned. Her role will be reduced. We're restructuring leadership.
Reassigned.
Reduced.
Publicly.
Murmurs spread through the room. Eyes avoided hers. Some pitied her. Some enjoyed it. Elena didn't speak.
She didn't argue.
She didn't defend herself. She didn't react. She simply closed her notebook, calmly. What no one in that room remembered was this. Elena didn't just manage systems. She didn't just oversee compliance. She didn't just approve processes. She controlled one authorization chain. One legal signature protocol. One final approval layer that no executive, not even the CEO, could bypass. And Richard Hale had just humiliated the only person who could legally activate it. She walked out of the room quietly, and the countdown began. Elena returned to her office as if nothing had happened. Her posture was steady, her expression unreadable. Anyone watching would have thought she was defeated. She wasn't. She sat at her desk and opened the internal compliance dashboard, a system she had designed after a cross-border audit nearly shut the company down years ago. Back then, no one cared how it worked. They only cared that it saved them. At the top of the screen blinked a quiet reminder. Final executive authorization. Active, holder, Moreau.
That hadn't changed.
Demotions moved titles. They didn't move authority. Elena scrolled through pending items. A major acquisition sat at the top, time-sensitive, headline-ready, already announced to investors. Billions depended on a single digital signature tied to regulatory law in 3 European jurisdictions. Her signature. She checked the timestamp. The board expected approval by end of day. Instead of signing, she clicked Hold. Compliance review required.
No alerts rang. No alarm sounded.
But deep inside the system, the deal froze. And upstairs, the CEO had no idea his biggest announcement had just stopped breathing. Within 20 minutes, the silence cracked. Elena's phone didn't ring yet, but the system logs told her everything. Repeated access attempts. Escalation requests. Priority flags flashing yellow. Someone upstairs had noticed the acquisition wasn't moving. She leaned back in her chair, recalling the meeting from years ago when she had insisted on this safeguard. Too slow, Richard had said then. Too cautious. She had smiled and built it anyway. The protocol was simple on paper. Any deal crossing regulatory boundaries required a certified compliance holder to sign off. Not a CEO. Not legal. Not the board. One name. Her name. An email finally arrived. Subject: Urgent. Authorization delay. From Executive Office. Elena didn't open it. Instead, she opened the audit trail and added a single note. Review pending due to leadership restructuring risk. That phrase alone triggered a mandatory pause under EU corporate governance law. Upstairs, Richard Hale was probably asking who still had control. Downstairs, Elena closed her laptop. Power didn't shout. It waited. The second email came faster. Shorter. Sharper. Subject: Elena, call me now. From Richard Hale. She stared at the sender name for a moment, then locked her screen and walked to the window. The city below moved as usual, trams gliding, people crossing streets, unaware that a billion-euro deal was quietly suffocating. When she returned to her desk, she finally opened the message.
No apology. No explanation.
Just urgency. She replied with one line. I'm currently reviewing compliance exposure following today's public leadership changes. Nothing more. That response automatically logged into the system as an official compliance statement. The freeze extended another 12 hours. Phones began ringing across legal and finance. Calendars filled with emergency meetings Elena wasn't invited to and didn't need to attend. She checked the regulation notes again. Public demotion of a compliance officer during an active acquisition? That alone raised governance red flags. Elena documented everything. Because revenge wasn't her goal. Corrective accountability was. And it was about to get very uncomfortable for the CEO. By early afternoon, the pressure shifted from quiet concern to visible panic. Elena could feel it without leaving her office. The compliance system showed it clearly, multiple senior executives requesting override access they didn't have. Legal trying to reroute approvals. Finance attempting provisional signatures. Every attempt failed. A red banner appeared on the acquisition file. Risk escalation. Executive conduct under review. That wasn't accidental. The system was designed to protect companies from exactly this kind of leadership behavior: public demotion, instability, reputational exposure during sensitive negotiations. Her phone finally rang. Not the CEO this time. It was the chair of the board. "Elena," he said carefully, "we need to understand why the authorization is stalled." She answered evenly. "Because the company publicly undermined the role responsible for ensuring regulatory integrity." Silence. Then, quietly, "What do you need?" Elena looked at the screen. At her name. At the authority they had ignored.
"Clarity," she said.
"And respect for process." The board understood one thing very well. Processes don't bend to ego. The chair exhaled slowly. Richard may have acted prematurely. Elena didn't respond. She didn't need to. The silence did the work for her. Minutes later, a calendar invite appeared on her screen. Emergency board session. Compliance required. She accepted. When the call began, Richard Hale was already there. His confidence was gone, replaced by tight shoulders and forced calm. "Elena," he said, "this delay is damaging." She met his eyes through the camera. So was the demotion. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. She continued, steady and factual. "EU governance rules require stability in certified compliance roles during acquisitions. Today's public action created documented risk. Until that's addressed, my signature remains invalid." Richard tried to interrupt. The chair stopped him with a raised hand. "Elena," the chair asked, "what resolves the risk?" She answered without emotion. "Formal reinstatement of my authority. Public clarification. And written assurance that compliance decisions are independent of executive retaliation." The room went silent. For the first time, Richard realized something important. He didn't need her forgiveness. He needed her signature. Richard's jaw tightened. "You're holding the company hostage," he said. Elena didn't flinch.
"No."
"I'm holding it to the law." She shared her screen. A clean, clinical document appeared, timestamps, regulations, clauses highlighted in neutral gray.
"No emotion. Just facts."
"This protocol was approved by this board," she continued. "It exists to prevent impulsive executive behavior from endangering cross-border deals. Today, it did exactly that." One board member cleared her throat. "If regulators review this, how does it look?"
Elena answered calmly.
"It looks like a company that publicly undermined its compliance authority during an active acquisition." Another silence. Heavier this time. Richard leaned back, realizing the narrative had shifted. This wasn't about pride anymore. It was about exposure, legal, financial, reputational. Elena added one final sentence. "I can resolve this today." Every eye turned to her. "And if we don't?" Richard asked. She closed the document. Then the system does what it was designed to do.
"Protect the company."
From him. The board broke into a private sidebar, voices muted, cameras off.
Elena waited.
She didn't pace. She didn't check her phone. She simply watched the system clock tick forward. Every minute mattered. Behind the scenes, the acquisition partners were asking questions. Regulators were auto-notified of the delay classification. Market analysts were refreshing feeds, sensing something wrong. When the board returned, the chair spoke first. "We will issue a clarification." Richard's face tightened. "Immediately?" "Yes," the chair said. "Publicly." Elena nodded once. Then the compliance risk resets. A draft statement appeared in her inbox minutes later. Elena Morrow's role remains fully empowered during the acquisition period. Any perception otherwise was a miscommunication. She reviewed it carefully. Added 2 lines. Sent it back. Seconds later, it went live. The system updated. The red banner shifted to amber. Elena hovered over the signature field, but didn't click. Authority, she said evenly, must be restored before approval. This wasn't revenge. This was governance. Richard swallowed hard. What authority are you asking for? He said, carefully now. Elena didn't hesitate. Formal reinstatement of my title. Written confirmation of independence. And a board record stating that compliance decisions cannot be overridden by executive action. The chair nodded slowly. That's reasonable. Reasonable. The word landed heavier than any apology. A document appeared, digital, official, unmistakable. Elena read every line. Titles restored. Scope clarified. Protections codified. The board's signatures followed one by one. Only then did she place her cursor over the final field. She paused, not for drama, but for certainty. Outside the glass walls, the office hummed again. Phones rang with relief. Legal teams exhaled. Finance stopped improvising. Elena signed. The system pulsed green. The acquisition resumed. Markets stabilized. Richard leaned back, defeated but quieter now. Elena closed her laptop. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't made threats. She had simply reminded them that authority isn't granted by titles. It's embedded in systems. Elena left the boardroom quietly, heels clicking against the marble floor. Colleagues glanced up, some with surprise, others with cautious respect. Nobody applauded. This wasn't a show. This was control reclaimed. Her assistant, Marta, caught up. That went perfectly, she whispered, still catching her breath. Elena shook her head. Perfect isn't the word. Strategic. Precise. That's what counts. Emails began pinging immediately. Requests she'd submitted months ago were now approved automatically. Projects once stalled by petty office politics moved forward. Every workflow she had designed, every safeguard she had installed, was functioning exactly as intended. Even Richard's team couldn't bypass it. They tried, but the system flagged everything instantly. Compliance notifications, error alerts, automated approvals. It was all in motion, silently but unerringly. Elena paused at the window, looking over the city skyline. The city never slept, and neither did her plans. Today was a victory. Tomorrow, she'd build momentum. Control was quiet, but unmistakable. By evening, the office had shifted without anyone noticing immediately. Elena's fingerprints were on every process, every form, every signature workflow. The automated alerts she had programmed ensured that no shortcut could bypass her authority. Richard, the CEO, stormed into his office, flustered. Why hasn't this contract been signed? He demanded at the top of his lungs, slamming a stack of papers on his desk. His assistant hesitated. It's pending, sir. System flagged missing approvals. Richard's face turned red. He dialed the IT manager. This is unacceptable. Fix it now. Meanwhile, Elena sat in a quiet cafe across town, sipping her espresso, watching the notifications roll in. Every attempt to override her system was instantly logged, denied, and escalated. She smiled faintly. Her name wasn't just on the system. She was the system. Power, she realized, didn't have to be loud. It only had to be unstoppable. The next morning, the boardroom was tense. Elena's temporary demotion had been a spectacle, but the real power hadn't left her hands. Every signature Richard needed for mergers, vendor contracts, and payroll now required her approval. He tried subtlety first. Emails marked urgent flooded her inbox. Each one bounced back automatically. Pending approval, unauthorized access. Richard's frustration grew. He called for an emergency meeting with the senior managers. We need this contract signed by noon, he barked. The managers exchanged nervous glances. No one dared mention that Elena's digital fingerprints had locked the workflow. They feared her, not because she'd humiliated them, but because she owned what they relied on. Elena watched from her laptop, hundreds of miles away, tracking every attempt to bypass her system. Each failed attempt was a reminder. She hadn't just survived the humiliation, she had orchestrated it perfectly. Patience, she thought, is the deadliest power in a corporate war. By mid-afternoon, rumors began to swirl. Employees whispered about Elena's hidden authority. Some thought it was a glitch, others a deliberate maneuver. Richard grew frantic, pacing the office like a caged animal. Elena's inbox pinged constantly, showing requests for exceptions, overrides, and emergency approvals. Each time she denied a request, she added a tiny note, waiting for proper authorization. Her calm, measured tone in those automated messages contrasted sharply with the chaos Richard was creating around himself. The intern, blissfully unaware of the digital fortress Elena had built, fumbled through tasks that required signatures she now controlled. Every failed attempt reinforced a simple truth. Authority isn't granted by title, it's enforced by control. And Elena held every key. She smiled quietly, knowing that by the time Richard realized what had happened, it would be too late. The board called an emergency meeting. Richard, pale and sweating, tried to explain the situation. It must be a system error. Someone override, please. Elena walked in, calm as ever, her presence alone silencing the murmurs in the room. She didn't need to speak to assert control. Her digital dominion was evident in every pending approval Richard couldn't process. She took a seat, opened her laptop, and typed a single line into the system. All pending approvals frozen until further notice. The room collectively held its breath. Emails bounced, transactions stalled, and executives realized nothing moved without her consent. Richard's face drained of color. Every public humiliation he had delivered to Elena now seemed like a faint warning of what she could do quietly, efficiently, and irreversibly. Power, she thought, isn't shouted, it's silently held. And she had it all. The following morning, the office was eerily quiet. Richard's emails piled up, approvals halted, and every department scrambled to adjust. Elena didn't rush. She sipped her coffee, watching the chaos she had orchestrated with precision. By noon, the board requested a private meeting. Elena entered confidently, her laptop under her arm. "I've frozen all actions requiring my signature," she said simply. "Until we respect proper procedure, nothing moves. Not a single contract, not a single deal." Richard stammered, "But that's—" Elena interrupted, her voice calm, almost gentle. "That's accountability. That's respect. And that's how leadership works." In that moment, the room understood. Public humiliation and titles meant nothing if you controlled the system itself. Elena had taken her power back quietly, smartly, and irrevocably. By the time the week ended, Elena wasn't just restored, she was untouchable. She didn't need revenge to feel victorious. She simply owned the signature that controlled them all. The end story.